Hi, this is Mac of MaxList. Find Your Dream Job is presented by MaxList, an online community where you can find free resources for your job search, plus online courses and books that help you advance your career. My latest book is called Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. It's a reference guide for your career that covers all aspects of the job search, including expert advice in every chapter. You can get the first chapter for free by visiting maxlist.org/anywhere. This is Find Your Dream Job, the podcast that helps you get hired, have the career you want, and make a difference in life. I'm Mac Pritchard, your host and publisher of MaxList. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Ben Forstag, Becky Thomas, and Jessica Black from the MaxList team. This week, we're talking about a question we often get at MaxList. Are resumes dead? Which do you think is more effective at persuading an employer to hire you? Your paper resume or what turns up in an online search? Some people say that online tools make resumes irrelevant. Our guest expert this week is Chris Fields. He says, in fact, the resume isn't dead. It can make a huge difference when used properly. Chris and I talk later in the show. You probably know that many companies use computers that scan your resume for keywords. Use the right words and you may get an interview. Ben has a list of 500 keywords that hiring managers look for. He shares it with us in just a moment. Many universities, nonprofits, and employers sponsor career fairs. But are they a good use of your time? That's our question of the week, and it comes from listener Jayne Morgan in San Jose, California. Becky shares her advice shortly. As always, let's check in with the MaxList team. And Ben, you're out there every week poking around the internet, looking through the nooks and crannies, trying to find websites, books, and tools our listeners can use in a job search and in their careers. So what have you uncovered this week?
So this week I found a handy list of resume keywords to help your resume. We've talked a lot about the importance of keywords in the past. Loading your resume with the right keywords is important because this is what recruiters and applicant tracking systems are really looking for when they read your resume. And when I say read, I'm really kind of using quotation marks there, even though this is a podcast and our listeners can't see that, because most of the time recruiters aren't really diligently reading your resume. I think we all know this. I believe the statistic is like they spend 8 to 15 seconds. 15 seconds might be on the generous side when they're looking at resumes with that initial screening. And so in this very cursory review, what they're looking for are specific keywords, the smack in the forehead, clear indications that you can do the job at hand. Keywords are even more important when you're talking about applicant tracking systems, and that's like 80% of all employers, so a lion's share. These systems are almost entirely keyword-based, so what they're doing is they're looking for specific words that the recruiter has said, like, this is the important thing I want you to look for. And if your resume language doesn't line up with the criteria identified by the job description, you're just out of luck. And so you always want to customize your keywords around the job description. I found this really interesting list of frequently used keywords. It came from JobScan, which is a resource I've talked about in the past. JobScan is a company where you can put in the job description in one window and your resume or cover letter in the other one, and then it cross-references the two and says, like, yeah, there's great keyword matching here, or you can improve your resume by doing this. It's a way to kind of optimize keywords. Well, what JobScan did is they went and they searched all of the job descriptions that had been uploaded into their system over the last year and pulled out the top 500 keywords that they noticed over and over and over again. So it's this really cool list. It's the 500 resume keywords that are going to be most helpful to you.
And this is, as you talk, Ben, it reminds me of a software package called Yoast that online communicators use to identify powerful keywords that will help their websites move up in online searches. And there are a lot of parallels there, aren't there?
Same idea, where they're just saying like, this is a keyword that we see a lot of employers are looking for, so you want to make sure you pack your resume with this word. And you want to use it appropriately. You don't want to have like the word like design listed 400 times in your resume. That'd be weird. But like, you want to be aware that these are the criteria that the recruiter or the ATS system are looking for. So I'm going to spare you all me reading all 500 of these.
Yeah, that might take a while.
But I thought let's do something creative here. Let's see how many of the words I can get through in one breath.
Fun game. Fun game.
Somebody got a timer?
Sure.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
Design, operations, technical, training, sales, marketing, reporting, compliance, strategy, research, analytical, engineering, policies, budget, finance, project management, health, customer service, documentation, content, presentation, brand presentation, safety, certification, accounting, regulations, acquisitions, TV, instrumentation, strategic direction, law enforcement, call center, experiments, technical skills, human resource, business cases, building relationships.
Yikes.
Well done, Ben.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was about 35 of them. So if you want to...
And that was about 15 seconds, 12 to 15 seconds.
Okay.
I bet you if I did that every episode, I'd get better and better.
Let's spare the listeners, huh?
Yeah. Any surprises on that list of 35?
I guess call center would be weird, but I guess there's a lot of jobs out there for call center people, so that's disproportionately skewing some of the data.
And that shows your experience in that, because that's a demanding job.
Yeah,
That's true.
And it's the kind of job where like you need a certain mindset, and if you have some background in it, you probably do much better than a novice.
Absolutely.
So again, that was about 35 of the top 500. If you want to hear the other 465, check out the URL we have on our show notes. Again, this is the top 500 resume keywords that boost your resume. It's from JobScan. And as always, the URL in the show notes.
Great. Well, thank you, Ben. If you've got a suggestion for Ben and would like to see how much content he can spit out after another breath, we'd love to hear from you. Write Ben directly. His email address is ben@maxlist.org, and we'd love to share your idea on the show. Now let's turn to you, our listeners, and Becky is here to answer one of your questions. So, Becky, what's in the mailbag this week?
Well, Mac, this week in the mailbag, we've got Jayne Morgan emailing us from San Jose, California. And her question is a pretty simple one, but it got me thinking. So she asks, are job fairs worth my time? Any advice on how I should approach employers at a career fair? So good question, Jayne. I feel like in general, like when I first think about job fairs, it's something that's maybe a little bit like outdated. Maybe they're not as popular as they used to be, but they still are going on all the time, and they can be a great opportunity. There's dozens, sometimes hundreds of employers in the room, and they're all hiring. So there's a great opportunity there, but it can also be really overwhelming to walk into a room full of booths and branding and people that you don't know, strangers,
definitely.
And all kinds of other job seekers who are there for the same reason. So if you're going to go to a job fair, you need to show up prepared so that you can differentiate yourself from the rest of the crowd and the melee inside the job fair. So definitely never, like if you're gonna go, like I said, you should be prepared. If you're gonna go in cold and have no idea like who's gonna be there, what kind of industries and what kind of jobs and roles that they're hiring for, it's not really worth your time. So take some time ahead of the job fair. If you've got one you've scoped out for the next couple weeks and you have some time to research, do a few things ahead of time to make yourself stand out. So a few tips here. The first one, you can usually get really detailed information about who's going to be there, what kind of roles, if it's specific to a certain industry. Check out the job fair website or the event listing, do some research online, and check out the list of employers who are going to be there. A lot of times they'll also talk about the types of jobs and even specific departments that are hiring. So that's all super useful information for you. And then invest some time in researching. So research the companies that you're interested in. I would definitely recommend narrowing down a list of priority organizations and positions that you really want to target, because you're not going to make it to everybody and you're probably not qualified for all those positions. So make sure that you know how to divide your time once you're there and make the most of it. And then I was also thinking like you could go a step further by selecting maybe like your top 3 or 5 opportunities that you really want to make sure that you hit when you go to the job fair and do some deep dive research. I would definitely like look up the company on LinkedIn and you can see who works there. Check out those employees and see if you have any connections in common with them and send them a message. Even better if that someone is an HR hiring sort of recruitment, talent management type of position, because they might even be there at the job fair. So that way you can name drop when you show up to their booth at the fair, and that's going to like blow them away. That's really going to impress them. That's going to make you stand out in such a great way. So the bottom line for me is, if you know that the job fair will be hosting organizations or featuring positions that are in line with what you're looking for, and the big thing is you're willing to put in the research work ahead of time to get prepared, I think job fairs are absolutely worth your time and you should check it out. So that's my advice for Jayne. Good luck. And anyone else have thoughts?
Yeah, that was awesome. I do think research is just so important.
Yeah.
Research and be prepared. I think along those same lines of what you already mentioned, Becky, I think that researching who is going to be there. And I liked what you mentioned about targeting your top 3. I was going to my advice would be a little bit towards that same area of make sure check in with yourself and know why you're going, know what opportunities you're looking for and what job you're looking for. We talk about this all the time of focusing in on your goals and your career so that you can make the most out of it. And I think that is really crucial to be able to walk into the room knowing exactly what you're looking for and being able to meet some new organizations, but also knowing who to invest your time in, because if there's 500 organizations there, you don't have time to talk to every single one of them. So you need to be very targeted and very specific and very intentional. One other thing I would mention would be to, along the lines of standing out, if you have business cards that has your contact information, it doesn't have to be related to an organization, but you can make really nice looking business cards from whatever it is. Vistaprint, moo.com is great. Several other organizations do this, that you can just get some printed that have your name, phone number, and I would put your LinkedIn handle on there as well. So there's something to leave behind once you have made those contacts. And then you're not leaving your whole resume, because that's a lot of information, and it's a lot of, if you're printing 500, which don't do that, but also if you're printing several, that can be a big investment. But if you can leave behind something that they can follow up with your LinkedIn, and then you can email them later or keep the connection going, I would suggest that as well.
Great.
Just building off what you guys said, which is great. In addition to like having a target list of people you want to hit up, and knowing what you're looking for in general, like have a real good solid elevator pitch so that when you're going up and meeting a person, like you're giving them who you are, what you're interested in, why you're good at it in like 15 to 20 seconds. Because there are a lot of people there. There are lines of people there. People swarm around the more popular organizations.
Yep.
And you need to like make it real clear with the recruiter what you're interested in, and the clearer you are, the better response you'll get.
Absolutely. That's a great point. I didn't think about that, and that's really important.
The only thing I would add is just building on your point, Becky and Jessica, about the importance of goal setting. It helps you manage your expectations.
Yes.
So when you leave that fair and you have walked into the room knowing that here's the list of companies I want to connect with, whether it's 3, 5, or 10, and you're able to do that, you're going to feel, I think, a sense of satisfaction. You probably aren't going to get a job offer at a job fair, but it does give you the opportunity to begin building relationships and making connections.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not going to walk in expecting to get a job offer, but you can start setting up appointments to make informational interviews or just follow up directly with them later. I think that's great.
Yeah, it's a great way to make a bunch of connections in a short amount of time. So if you're prepared, you're going to make some great connections.
Good. Well, thank you. And thank you, Becky, and thank you, Jayne, for the question. If you got a question for Becky, send her an email. Her address is becky@maxlist.org. You can also call her listener line. That number is area code 716-JOB-TALK, or post your question on the MaxList Facebook page. And if we use your question on the show, we'll send you a copy of our book, Land Your Dream Job Anywhere. We'll be back in a moment, and when we return, I'll talk with this week's guest expert, Chris Fields, about our topic, Are Resumes Dead? We all know that first impressions matter, and the very first thing a hiring manager sees is your cover letter. That letter gives you a make or break opportunity to wow an employer. Yet, too many job seekers squander this chance. They send a cover letter with typos, a sloppy format, or cut and paste text. And avoiding these rookie mistakes isn't enough to get you an interview. You also have to tell a compelling story. Sounds complicated, right? In fact, if you follow a few simple rules, you can write a cover letter that stands heads and shoulders above the rest. I've created a guide that shows you how to do this. It's called Simple Rules for a Winning Cover Letter. Inside, I explain the ideal content, structure, and style that appeal to hiring managers. And you get examples and templates to follow to write your own winning cover letters. Get Simple Rules for a Winning Cover Letter today. Go to maxlist.org/cover letter. Start transforming your cover letter today. Again, that's maxlist.org/cover letter. Now, back to the show. Now let's turn to this week's guest expert, Chris Fields. Chris Fields owns and operates Resume Crusade, and he has a master's degree in labor relations and human resources from The Ohio State University. He has been featured on Mashable, Monster Thinking, and Oprah.com. Chris joins us today from Cordova, Tennessee. Chris, thanks for being on the show.
No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure. Now, Chris, we're talking about resumes this week, and as you know, because I know you've tackled this question before, there are people out there who say in a world of online communications, particularly with websites, LinkedIn profiles, and Google searches, the old-fashioned paper resume is dead. What do you say, Chris?
Well, obviously, I disagree. The resume, I believe, is still alive and takes various forms. And also, it depends on your region, where you're located. I can tell you, Cordova, for those who don't know, is a suburb of Memphis, Tennessee, so basically part of the greater Memphis area. And resumes are definitely still vital, in this area and in many others, too. I've done resumes for people in other countries as well, England and Romania and Canada and different places. So I don't think it's just a matter of them being outdated. I think some areas, they may not be as sought after as they once were, especially if you're talking about a tech community, a thriving and bustling tech community. Maybe they don't ask for it until at the end of the process as a formality. But for the rest of us, they are very vital and they're still alive.
Well, in your work with your clients, Chris, what benefits do the people you work with see from using paper resumes?
Well, it's still the best way, one of the best ways to get a conversation with someone. And even in a referral situation, I think we pretty much know that a lot of jobs are passed around through networks, informal networks, internal networks, friends, things like that. So referrals. But even with that, you have to have a resume. And so and maybe you've been there before, you ask one of your friends for a resume and they give you a resume that's pretty bad and you don't really feel comfortable passing that along, right? And part of you wants to tell them, hey, when's the last time you had this thing updated? Or you need to really update this and then I can pass it along to the next level. So resumes are still important in that way where it gets you an introductory conversation. And also it's a first impression of sorts in some cases. So very much still alive and important.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of old-fashioned business cards, but that's not going to cut it, is it? The resume just offers a much more complete picture of who you are and what you've done, doesn't it?
I believe they still do. And I think that right now resumes, they get a bad rap because, we see so many bad ones and people think that that's how they have to be. But they don't. They can be a lot better now. I mean, we have a lot of different things you can do with technology and make them look better or more creative. You can also just jazz up your resume visually with just a few little things. But even the content, some of the the words and the way we consume information now. Everything is pretty much in 140 to 200 characters. So, you don't want to have a resume that looks dated with a wall of text. You want to break it up, make it look more modern. You can do different things with the fonts as well. So there's lots of things you can do to add personality to your resume. When I first started writing resumes over 5 years ago, people didn't want their social profiles on their resume. So if they had a Twitter account or if they had a blog or a website, they didn't want that information on their resume. But now they do. And you can get away with putting links and icons to certain things, even QR codes. But I think that's kind of going away now. That kind of has passed a little bit. But at one point, I had requests for QR codes to different things to be put on resumes. So the resumes aren't dead. They can still be regenerated and reimagined for the new millennium.
Well, let's talk about the advantages of doing the things that you just mentioned. For example, putting social icons on your resume. How does that help a job seeker?
Well, I think what it does is, one, it shows that the resume has been updated recently. It shows that this person has invested in their resume to make sure that it looks good, it looks different, and it has lots of information that may not come with the average resume that generally categorizes job duties. So I think visually it helps it to stand out. And I also think that it sends a subliminal message that this person is creative and is open to new concepts. So there's subtleties that you can use with design to make statements about, where you are and how open you are to new things and doing new things. So, one of my dear friends, he is 60 years old and his resume is very modern and updated. And you probably wouldn't expect that from him being 60, and on the flip side of that, I have some friends who are, younger, who resumes look very dated. So there's a lot of different things you can do with the resume.
Now, what are some other changes you've seen in your years helping people with their resumes? You mentioned adding social icons and changes in design. What are some of the other new developments, and how do they help job seekers, Chris?
Well, I'm not sure if there's so much new, but I do have recognized over the years that your resume, the format, should speak to your career level. So if you're entry level, and your entry level resume shouldn't look like a CEO's resume. And I don't mean that just from content. I mean that from format and design and the way information is laid out. You can get away with a little more as you move up the ladder and as your career develops. What I mean by that is, most resumes start out with the heading and then some type of career profile or statement that explains what this person wants to do. And I think we've kind of come accustomed to that. You also see an area of what I'll call expertise or strengths on a resume. Well, with executives, you don't really see those things. You may see a career statement followed by some major accomplishments, some maybe top 6 to 10 major accomplishments over the years. That's something that you don't really see from an entry level or mid-level resume, showing what they've done. It's not a functional thing. It's not that. It's just pretty much highlighting, though, some things that stand out, running billion and billion-dollar organizations. So there's different things you can do with the format, and then you can add, speaking engagements for those who are CEOs who happen to also get out and do keynote speaking sessions. There's different things that you could add to the resume now that maybe people didn't add or didn't do it the right way before.
I'm really struck by the point you're making because I see a lot of resumes. I know you see probably 10 times as many as I do, but your point here about the versatility in formats is well taken because 15 or 20 years ago, candidly, the format was almost always the same. There might be a professional objective, experience, and education, and no matter where a person was in their career. So I think there's a lot more opportunity because of that versatility in format today. Chris, one thing that struck me when I was reading your blog, preparing for the interview, was you say that resumes are really a starting point, not a destination. Could you talk more about that?
Yeah. So, resumes are part of the package. If for this whole job search thing to really work well, you need a resume, you need a network, and you need to have good interview skills. You also need to know what you want to do with your career. I have some clients who I have to kind of help figure out where do they want to go next, and how do we get them to that next point. And believe it or not, the resume, just by the language, can help you with that. If someone wants to be a manager, they feel like they're ready for that next step, well, then the resume needs to show that you've done some management at some point. Even if your title is not manager, maybe you've led a team through a successful project. That needs to be on there. So the resume is a starting point, but it's not the end, because you need to, like I said, for it to really work well, for all the perfect storm, for everything to come together, having a resume, having a network of trusted people that you can email your resume to and say, hey, I'm looking for the next opportunity, or it's time for me to accept a new challenge. That's big. Being able to put that resume along with a nice summary on your LinkedIn profile, those things are big. Being able to go out get off the computer, go out and network, and have your resume where you can easily shoot it through an email, or pass it along to someone, however you want to do that. But networking is big. And like I mentioned earlier, I've had people to call me and say, I was going to refer my friend to this job, but their resume was so terrible. Can you help them out? That is a real thing that happens. And people don't realize that their resume, even if they've been lucky in their career and never had to have one. I've had several clients that's never had a resume ever in 20, 30 years. Well, now they're coming to me because they need one, because it's time for the next step. And everybody's telling them, hey, before I can help you out, I need a resume. So it's the first step, but having that network is just as big. And of course, there are going to be situations where people are getting jobs without a resume. It happens a lot, especially, again, I'm going back to the tech industry, but I'm sure there's other industries as well, construction or logistics, where if you know a good person that can do this work, they may say, okay, well, just, I trust your judgment, bring them along. But for those who are not able to make that happen, definitely want to invest in the resume and build your network and know how to go out and have a conversation with people about what you want to do and your strengths, and be able to comfortably, deliver an elevator pitch for your career.
It's an excellent point, because I think many people do think if they get the resume right, that's the end of the journey, and they simply have to distribute it. I know, too, Chris, that you're a big believer in the importance of personal branding and sharing that brand via online platforms. Could you tell us more about that and how that connects to people's resumes?
I try to tell people all the time. I used to do a lot of work here in Memphis with a local college, but that college is not around anymore. But I used to do a lot of work with the classes, and I would talk to them about how it's never too early to start learning. You don't have to wait until you finish your program to get on Twitter and learn what's going on. I know there's a lot. I know Twitter gets a bad rap. It's in the news a lot. But trust me, every industry has a community online. And in fact, I'm going to get this stat blundered a little bit, but it's something like every Fortune 500 company has at least one Twitter account. At least one.
I think that's absolutely right. Yeah.
Some of them have several. So to be able to create yourself a professional profile on Twitter, follow the companies and the people who are doing what you want to do, looking at the things that they are doing, because new information doesn't break in college first. It breaks online first now. It breaks online, and then it gets added to a program later. I know schools who are just now adding social media to their HR program. Social media has been out for over 12 years now. So it's important to remember that personal branding, learning what you want to do and being an expert, it starts early. You don't have to wait until you finish your degree. You can go out and start, building your own equity now.
Excellent. Well, Chris, tell us what's coming up next for you.
Well, I've been featured in a book called Rip the Resume by Torrin Ellis. Torrin Ellis is a diversity inclusion ambassador, and he wrote a book about why, basically why he wished that we didn't need the resume to secure a job, but he also understands it's important. That's why he reached out to me to be featured in the book. And it's a really good book. It's helped a lot of people. So that's one thing that I'm working on. And then just continually to observe the resume landscape, figuring out what's next and trying to stay ahead of the curve so I can offer my clients the very best services possible.
Well, I know you have a lot of useful content about resumes and other job hunting and career subjects on your website, and people can find it by visiting resumecrusade.com. We'll be sure to include that in the show notes too. Chris, thanks for joining us this week.
I appreciate it once again. Thanks for having me.
It's been our pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
We're back in the Max List studio. So tell me, team, what's your reaction to my conversation with Chris? What are key takeaways you got from that?
I thought it was great. I thought that his point about the resume being sort of part of the larger professional ecosystem, that it's not like I think he said like the resume is the starting point, but it's not the end.
I loved that too.
Yeah.
I did too.
Yeah. You have to have the resume. It brings your whole professional story together in a succinct way, or it should. And you need it for, like he was mentioning, like referrals and things. And I haven't printed out my resume in years probably, but I always have it updated and it's in a document, so it's ready to print if I need it. But
or
it's
share
more
via email or whatever.
It's more being attached to emails and things like that. And I think that, you know, when you think about the traditional paper resume that's like printed on nice paper, that might not be as big of a thing anymore, but you still need a resume.
Absolutely. I think that's huge. And I liked also, like you were saying, I liked his point about it being a starting point and not a destination, and his emphasis on making sure that you're still networking. So just because you had, I know you referenced this, Mac, just because you have your resume done and completed and ready to send or print doesn't mean that you can just sort of sit back and wait for jobs to come to you. You still have to develop those networks and that sort of thing, and provide, develop those opportunities to be able to give that resume out. So I think that was really important for him to showcase. Yeah.
Because I think everybody around the table has had this experience. A job seeker will contact us and say, I'd like to get feedback on my resume. And you look at it and, you typically I'll say, I'll look for typos, or are they emphasizing accomplishments and results? And then for many people, the meeting is over. Mm-hmm. And to Chris's point, it's just the resume is just a start. It's a way to work with your networks and be clear about your goals and share your story. It's not about capturing all of that on a piece of paper and then you're done.
Absolutely, yeah.
That kind of echoes something that one of our previous guests, Jenny Foss, says about resumes. She calls it like your chief marketing document, and it only serves one function, which is like to get you the interview. So many people I know think like, if I can just get the perfect resume, then the job's mine. And no, like that just gets you the next step in the process. The other thing I was just going to add was like, I can't imagine not having a resume or getting a job without it. Cause like even when you're working through that hidden job market of learning about jobs and getting interviews through like connections, someone's always like, well, send me your resume. It's like the baseline of your professional history there. But I think in some industries like tech, where people are getting poached out of other companies, like they don't even need a resume. That's a different world in my mind.
It definitely is. But one other thing that what you were mentioning sort of brought up for me that I wanted to just share was that I liked also that he reiterated the being clear, that your resume helps you be clear about what goals you're going out for, which I know we talked about at the beginning of the show briefly, but I think, and we talk about that on most shows, but I think that was really important to reiterate of, you have to be clear of what you're wanting, even if you don't have that objective statement, which I know is sort of a topic that people go back and forth on. And I think it's just whatever feels comfortable for you, but you do have to know what job you're looking for. It can't just be a serve-all general resume, because like Ben was saying before, with the keyword searches and things like that, it is going to help you get your foot in the door if you're very clear about what you're going for.
All right. Well, there you have it. So can I say it's a consensus of the group that resumes, in fact, aren't dead?
Not dead.
They're just evolving.
Okay. Do you agree, Ben?
Their demise has been prematurely announced, yes.
All right. So like peanut butter and jelly, what goes together with a resume but a cover letter?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And when you're putting that cover letter together, you want to make it perfect. So don't forget to get your copy of Simple Rules for a Winning Cover Letter today. Go to maxlist.org/cover letter. Again, that URL is maxlist.org/cover letter. And join us next Wednesday when our special guest will be Delina Bradley. She'll explain how to make a hiring manager like you. Until next time, thanks for letting us help you find your dream job.